My name is Evelyn, and I've spent the better part of my adult life trying to prove myself in a world that seems determined to ignore me. It's funny. When you're young, they tell you hard work pays off. They say if you just keep your head down, do what's asked of you, and go above and beyond, success will find you. But no one warns you about how success often gets rerouted straight into the hands of someone who doesn't deserve it. I'm not saying this to sound bitter. I'm saying it because it's true. And trust me, I wasn't always like this. There was a time when I believed every word of those motivational posters plastered all over our break room. Teamwork makes the dream work. Believe in yourself and others will too. Oh, the irony. If only those shiny slogans came with an asterisk. Results may vary depending on office politics. Let me take you back to where it all started. Or at least where things began spiraling out of control. 6 years ago, fresh out of college, I landed my first real job at Crestwood Solutions, a mid-sized marketing firm tucked away in the heart of downtown. The building gleamed under the sun, its glass walls reflecting ambition and promise. To me, it felt like stepping into a new chapter of life, one where I could finally put everything I'd learned into practice. I wanted to make an impact, not just for myself, but for the people around me. Naive? Maybe. But isn't everyone at 22? From day one, I threw myself into my work. I stayed late most nights, poring over spreadsheets and brainstorming ideas for campaigns that would blow clients away. My desk became my second home, cluttered with sticky notes, half-empty coffee cups, and stacks of reports waiting to be perfected. I didn't mind the long hours or the occasional missed dinner plans with friends. This was my chance to shine, and I wasn't going to waste it. But then there was Greg. Greg. You can't talk about my story without mentioning him. He joined the company 6 months after I did, swaggering into the office like he owned the place. His suits were tailored, his jokes landed perfectly, even when they weren't funny, and his charm seemed to work wonders on everyone except me. While I was buried under deadlines, Greg floated from meeting to meeting, somehow managing to contribute very little while still making himself indispensable. At first, I thought maybe I was being unfair. After all, we had different approaches to work, where I preferred meticulous planning and execution. Greg thrived on spontaneity and charisma. Maybe he brought something to the table I couldn't see. That illusion lasted exactly 3 weeks before reality slapped me in the face. During one particularly grueling project, I noticed Greg presenting my ideas as his own during a team meeting. Not once, not twice, but consistently. Each time, he'd flash his trademark grin, and the room would erupt in applause. Meanwhile, I sat quietly, biting my tongue, wondering why no one else saw through him. Still, I told myself it was fine. Ideas are meant to be shared, right? As long as the work got done. Who cared whose name ended up attached to it? So I kept pushing forward, churning out proposal after proposal, campaign strategy after campaign strategy. I even started keeping detailed records of my contributions, just in case anyone ever questioned them. Spoiler alert, no one did. Things reached a boiling point last year when rumors began swirling about a promotion opening up within the department. Our boss, Mr. Caldwell, a man whose default expression resembled somewhere between mild disinterest and outright boredom, called us all into a meeting to discuss the opportunity. He droned on about leadership qualities, vision, and commitment, all while barely looking up from his notes. By the end of the speech, I was practically vibrating with excitement. This was it, the moment I'd been working toward for years. For weeks leading up to the announcement, I poured even more energy into my projects, determined to leave no doubt about my capabilities. I took on extra tasks, volunteered for high-profile assignments, and made sure every single detail was flawless. When the big day finally arrived, I walked into the conference room feeling confident, ready to hear my name called. Instead, Mr. Caldwell cleared his throat and said, after careful consideration, "We've decided to promote Greg to senior marketing manager." The words hit me like a freight train. For a split second, I thought I must have misheard him. Surely he couldn't mean that Greg. But as applause filled the room and Greg stood up, beaming like he'd just won the lottery, the truth sank in. All my hard work, all my sacrifices, they hadn't mattered. At least not enough to outweigh whatever spell Greg had cast over everyone else. I don't remember much of what happened after that. I think I forced a smile, nodded politely, and congratulated Greg with as much grace as I could muster. Inside, though, I was crumbling. How could this happen? How could someone so blatantly undeserving rise to the top while I was left standing in the shadows? That night, I cried for hours. Not just because of the promotion. I could have handled that disappointment if it had been based on merit. No, what broke me was the realization that none of it mattered. None of the late nights, none of the sleepless weekends, none of the sacrifices. In the grand scheme of things, I was invisible. Just another cog in the corporate machine, easily replaceable by someone who knew how to play the game better than I did. Over the next few months, I tried to convince myself to move on. Maybe it was time to look for a new job, start fresh somewhere else. But leaving Crestwood felt like admitting defeat, like letting Greg win. So instead, I stayed, gritting my teeth and throwing myself even deeper into my work. If nothing else, I figured at least I could hold onto my pride. Then came the email that changed everything. It arrived on a Tuesday morning, right as I was settling into my usual routine. The subject line read, "Urgent meeting request, Mr. Caldwell." My stomach dropped. What now? Had I messed something up? Was I being fired? With trembling fingers, I opened the message and scanned the brief text inside. "Please come to my office at 10 a.m. sharp. Important matter to discuss." By the time 10 a.m. rolled around, I was a bundle of nerves. I knocked on Mr. Caldwell's door, clutching a notebook like it might offer some semblance of protection. He gestured for me to sit, his usual air of detachment replaced by something bordering on guilt. "Evelyn," he began, folding his hands on the desk, "I wanted to speak with you privately about something significant." Significant. That word echoed in my mind, sending my imagination spiraling. Was he finally acknowledging my contributions, apologizing for the promotion fiasco? Or was this about something else entirely? As he continued speaking, I realized neither scenario was correct. Instead, Mr. Caldwell revealed that the company was facing financial difficulties severe enough to warrant layoffs. And guess whose name appeared at the top of the list? "It's nothing personal," he assured me, though his tone suggested otherwise. "We're restructuring, and unfortunately your position has been identified as non-essential." Non-essential. The phrase stung more than any insult ever could. All those years of dedication, reduced to two cold, clinical words. I wanted to scream, to demand answers, to remind him of everything I'd done. But I bit my tongue, nodding stiffly as he outlined the severance package and timeline for my departure. Walking out of his office, I felt hollow, defeated, betrayed, and yet, amidst the chaos of emotions swirling inside me, a spark of defiance flickered to life. If Crestwood didn't value me, then screw them. Screw Greg. Screw Mr. Caldwell. I deserved better, not just in terms of recognition, but in terms of respect. That night, I sat down at my kitchen table and began drafting a resignation letter. Not the polite, professional kind HR expects. No, this one would be raw, unfiltered, and utterly honest. Every pent-up frustration, every overlooked contribution, every ounce of betrayal, it all poured onto the page. By the time I finished, tears blurred my vision, but I felt lighter, freer. The next morning, I marched into the office, letter in hand, ready to deliver it personally. As I approached Mr. Caldwell's desk, however, fate intervened in the form of an unexpected phone call, one that changed everything and set the stage for what came next. The phone call came out of nowhere, shattering the tense silence in Mr. Caldwell's office. He held up a finger to signal me to wait as he answered it, his usual monotone voice suddenly sharpening with urgency. "Yes, this is Caldwell." "What? Are you sure?" His eyes darted toward me, briefly before returning to the receiver. "I'll be there immediately." He hung up without another word and stood abruptly, grabbing his jacket from the back of his chair. For a moment he hesitated, glancing at the resignation letter still clutched tightly in my hand. Then, almost reluctantly, he muttered, "Evelyn, we'll have to continue this later. Something urgent has come up." And just like that, he brushed past me, leaving me standing alone in his office. I stared after him, my heart pounding. This wasn't how I'd imagined things going. I'd prepared myself for confrontation, for the inevitable awkwardness of handing over a scathing resignation letter, but not for an interruption. Still, something about the look on Caldwell's face lingered in my mind. It wasn't just stress, it was fear. Whatever that call was about, it had shaken him. Curiosity got the better of me. Instead of leaving the office or retreating to my desk, I lingered near Caldwell's door, pretending to organize some files while keeping an ear out for any stray bits of conversation. Within minutes, whispers began spreading through the hallways like wildfire. Someone mentioned client, another said lawsuit, and then Greg's name floated into the mix. My stomach churned. Could whatever was happening involve him? It didn't take long for the rumors to solidify into something more concrete. By mid-morning, the entire floor was buzzing. Crestwood Solutions' biggest client, a global tech giant responsible for nearly half the company's revenue, was threatening legal action. Apparently, their latest campaign, spearheaded by none other than Greg, had gone disastrously wrong. The ads were riddled with errors, culturally insensitive messaging, and glaring factual inaccuracies. Social media backlash had erupted overnight, dragging both the client and Crestwood into a PR nightmare. As the details trickled down, I couldn't help but feel a twisted sense of satisfaction. Karma, it seemed, had finally caught up with Greg. But even as part of me reveled in his downfall, another part, the professional side I'd worked so hard to cultivate, felt uneasy. A disaster of this magnitude didn't just affect Greg or Caldwell. It impacted everyone in the company. Jobs would be lost, reputations ruined, futures destroyed. And despite everything, I didn't want to see innocent people suffer because of someone else's incompetence. By lunchtime, the atmosphere in the office was suffocating. People huddled in corners, whispering anxiously. Some packed up their belongings, fearing the worst. Others frantically tried to salvage what they could, scrambling to draft apologies and damage control plans. Amidst the chaos, I found myself rooted to my desk, staring blankly at my computer screen. Part of me wanted to join the frenzy, to throw myself into fixing the mess. But why should I? This wasn't my fault, it was Greg's. Let him deal with the consequences. Yet, as the hours dragged on, doubt crept in. If Crestwood collapsed, it wouldn't matter who was to blame. Everyone would pay the price, including me. Even if I planned to leave, walking away now, with the company teetering on the brink of collapse, would feel like running from the battlefield. Deep down, I knew I couldn't do that. Not when I still had unfinished business. That evening, as most of my coworkers fled the office early, I stayed behind. The quiet hum of fluorescent lights filled the empty halls, casting long shadows across abandoned desks. Sitting alone in my cubicle, I opened a fresh document on my laptop and began typing. This wasn't a resignation letter anymore. It was a plan. A strategy to turn the tide, not just for Crestwood, but for myself. For years, I'd played by the rules, hoping someone would notice my efforts. Now it was time to rewrite those rules entirely. I started by pulling together every piece of evidence I'd collected over the years, emails documenting my contributions, drafts of campaigns I'd created, metrics showing the success of projects I'd led. Then I dug deeper, combing through internal reports and client feedback to identify exactly where Greg's missteps had begun. By the time midnight rolled around, I had a comprehensive dossier detailing not only the scope of the current crisis, but also the systemic issues that had allowed someone like Greg to rise unchecked. But exposing the truth wasn't enough. To truly make an impact, I needed leverage, and inspiration struck when I remembered one crucial detail. The original concept for the botched campaign hadn't come from Greg at all. It had come from me. Months earlier, I'd pitched an innovative idea during a brainstorming session, a bold, forward-thinking approach designed to resonate with younger audiences. At the time, Caldwell had dismissed it as too risky, opting instead for Greg's safer and ultimately disastrous proposal. Now, with the client demanding answers and the company desperate for solutions, my rejected pitch might be the lifeline we needed. The next morning, I arrived at the office early, clutching a printed copy of my findings along with a revised version of my original campaign concept. When Caldwell returned, looking disheveled and exhausted, I requested another meeting. This time, however, I didn't walk in empty-handed. As I laid out the evidence before him, his expression shifted from irritation to disbelief to outright panic. This changes everything," he stammered, flipping through the pages. "Why didn't you say something sooner?" "Because no one ever asked," I replied evenly, "and because, until now, it didn't seem like anyone cared." Caldwell leaned back in his chair, rubbing his temples. For the first time since I'd known him, he looked genuinely conflicted. "We're in deep trouble, Evelyn," deeper than you realize. If we can't fix this, we're finished. That's why I'm here, I said firmly. I have a solution, but it's going to require trust. Trust that maybe you haven't given me before. He hesitated, weighing his options. Finally, he nodded. All right, tell me what you need. What followed was a whirlwind of activity unlike anything I'd experienced before. Over the next week, I worked tirelessly alongside a small team of colleagues who, like me, refused to give up on the company. Together, we retooled my campaign concept, addressing the criticisms that had sunk its initial iteration and tailoring it to align with the client's values. We reached out directly to key stakeholders, presenting our case with transparency and accountability. Slowly but surely, the tide began to turn. Greg, meanwhile, disappeared from the picture almost entirely. Rumors swirled that he'd been quietly reassigned to a minor role in another department, though no one seemed eager to confirm or deny them. Personally, I didn't care. He was irrelevant now, a relic of a broken system that was finally being dismantled. As the dust began to settle, I found myself reflecting on everything that had happened. In many ways, this ordeal had stripped me bare, forcing me to confront the harsh realities of ambition, loyalty, and self-worth. Yet it had also revealed something unexpected: strength, resilience, a determination to fight for what I believed in, even when the odds were stacked against me. Still, there was one question I couldn't shake. What came next? Had I earned enough goodwill to secure a future at Crestwood? Or was it time to forge a new path entirely? The answer, I realized, lay in the final chapter of my story, one that was yet to be written. In the end, Evelyn's hard work and determination paid off in ways she never expected. The revised campaign not only saved Crestwood Solutions, but also earned widespread acclaim, restoring the company's reputation and strengthening its relationship with the client. Impressed by her leadership and vision, Mr. Caldwell personally promoted Evelyn to senior marketing manager, the role Greg had once taken from her, and gave her full creative control over future projects. As for Greg, his career at Crestwood quietly fizzled out, leaving him to fade into obscurity. Meanwhile, Evelyn became a symbol of resilience and innovation within the company. Her triumph wasn't just personal. It inspired others around her to speak up and demand recognition for their contributions. With newfound confidence and purpose, Evelyn realized that happiness wasn't about revenge. It was about reclaiming her voice and proving to herself that she was capable of greatness. She walked into her new office on the first day of her promotion, ready to lead with integrity and passion, knowing she'd finally earned the respect she deserved. And as she looked out over the bustling workspace, Evelyn smiled, not because she'd won against those who doubted her, but because she'd found something far more valuable: peace.